It's time for another episode of the Cultural Hall. Mr. Mayor joins me for the news. How are you, sir?
Good morning,
It's funny.
afternoon, good evening, depending on when you're listening to this.
I've reached the point in life where when you start to not hear from someone, you start to go, "Oh, I wonder if everything's okay."
It's been a while, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's been a little while, and you had the medical things, which we've talked about a million times here in the Cultural Hall.
Everyone wants to hear about my gastric sleeve again.
But you start to wonder with things like that when you haven't heard from someone for a bit. You go, "Geez, is everything okay? Is there life? Does
Well, I
life get
was
in the way?"
I was traveling. I
Mhm.
went to Europe. I went on a Viking River cruise,
Did
and
they make you wear the hat?
they didn't make me wear
Oh,
the hat, but
okay.
it was great. We went from Amsterdam. That was about a week. We went from Amsterdam to Basel, Switzerland, stopping at like Cologne, Germany. We saw the relics of the three wise men there, in um, Strasbourg. I can't. Anyway, we
Strasbourg.
went to France, Germany,
Did you
the
see the
Black
Eiffel
Forest.
Tower?
No, it was the other side of France.
Oh,
The Rhine River essentially is
uh,
along the and it was just an amazing trip. And I'm like, I just it's one of those things that it's a great way to see Europe on one of those cruises,
mhm.
because you just don't have time to delve into everything. So it's a first time going. It's a great way to see a lot of that stuff. But all it really does is make you go, I want to spend several days, maybe a week in each one of the cities. And I
Yep.
haven't even touched things like Paris or everything else. So there was that. Then, right when I got home, we'll have to talk about this. This is a bit interesting. I learned my sister went over to Europe. So she's doing a pilgrimage, and we can talk about that.
Ooh,
She's
the
doing what's called the Camino de Santiago.
I was just gonna say, it's got to be the Camino de Santiago, which means walk a lot for many days.
It means the way of St. James.
Oh, that's what I meant. That's what I meant. It's the way
So
of
it's
St. James.
yeah, way of St. James. Well, I don't know if it means that, but that's another name for it, is the way of St. James. It's one of those pilgrimages that you can do a bunch. Actually, the relics of the three wise men are another pilgrimage, and there's a bunch of them, historic pilgrimages. And she decided to quit her job, go do the Camino de Santiago, and now she's going to India to learn to be a yogi,
Okay.
or learn yoga. And so she's going to spend 2 months there and everything else. So that's quite the journey. And the beauty of it is, where she left the church a long time ago, her and I have always been close, but when it comes to religion, it's almost like we couldn't speak.
Sure.
It was like,
Sure. We can talk
there was
about
just,
everything but that.
but that,
This is not a thing. Yep.
and this gave us an opportunity to kind of come back on that. It was a wonderful opportunity. I immediately saw it as a reason to like jump in and support her in ways that maybe I should have, when years ago, and maybe because of whatever reason things became hard. This is not that time, and it's been wonderful. And in fact, I thought maybe we should drag her onto the show to talk
To
about
talk
her
about the Camino
experience.
de Santiago,
Yeah,
I'd be
and
in. I'd be in.
yeah. So anyway, she grew up in Utah. She grew up in my family. So anyway, that's if she's up for it. But she's going to be in India for the next few months, so it'll be a few months before we can get her on. She's going to be isolated in vegetarianism and stretching and oming and whatever they do,
Yeah.
because I'm really good knowing
Learning the ways. It's interesting. When I hear things like what your sister is doing, certainly there's some level of like, man, that would be cool, right? I don't know that it's envy necessarily, because I don't know that like going to be a yogi is something that I personally sort of like ascribe to do, right? Or like that, like that's my
but
best life.
I agree with you. I think the choice that she made to be that courageous, to
Hmm.
do and to go all in,
Hmm.
that's,
Hmm.
I think, what I really envy, that side of things.
Yeah, there's part of that for me, but the other part for me is I go, how do they do that? And when I see these bold sort of life moves that people make, I just want to know, like I would love to sit with them, and sure they'd probably want to tell me about what inspired them to do this thing or whatever, right? but I just like to be like, so you had a house, and so what? You just decided, "Yeah, I'm not going to live in this house anymore," or like, or what? You just sold it and said, "Man, I'm going to put that in the bank account for a little while," or like,
I don't know the answer to that even with her, because I was worried by asking those kinds of questions that she would take it that I'm going, well, what are you doing with this? What are you doing
Mhm,
with it? The
mhm.
older brother, are you being smart about this? And I
Sure,
thought,
sure. You're making the best life choices.
yeah, yeah.
That's not why I'm curious. I just would
No,
like
no.
to
And
know.
it's not why I'm curious either. It's just our history. I just like, I'm going to stay away from those questions simply because I don't want her to feel that way. And I only want her to feel like I'm behind her.
Yeah.
Whatever the outcome is, good, bad, or anything, I'm behind her. So,
And I guess, coming full circle around on that, I guess when I did a similar thing, when I went away to clown college, I just did it. I wasn't like,
that
and
was
then I'll
like
do
your
and then I'll
yoga
do
thing.
this. Yeah,
The
it was like
clock.
when I became it was like becoming a yogi for me. But
So
like,
she's over there going, oh, I mean, you're going,
bang, beep, doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo. Yeah, you just sort of did it, and you figured things out, and
I
it
kind of did
almost
that with a music venue in Clearfield years ago. I kind of just like me and a colleague just kind of we're just going to do it, and it was a lot of work, and it ended up failing. But it was like we just kind of did it.
yeah, you just go for it, and you go, well, okay, here goes into the wind. Anything else new with you?
Well, there's I've obviously been I did the traveling and that, and then this last Sunday was quite a fun Sunday. We were sitting down in church, and Elder Suarez, I was up on the stand.
Well, there you
So
go.
yeah, so you start immediately going,
What did you
what's
do?
going on? Who did what? Who's getting
Yeah.
replaced? Who's doing this? And he was on his way back from ministry in South America. I
Mhm.
guess there's some family in the area. I didn't know that, but anyway, so he just came to our ward, and then here's I thought it was almost like the perfect chess pieces were put into place, because it was the bishop had, or the bishopric had asked the transgender person in our ward to speak, and all I could think of is like, are they simply rewriting their talk? And I didn't know what I know them well enough that they're likely not going to like lean away from being transgender, but they're also very supportive of the church standards in that way and stuff. And so I was wondering how this would go, you
Mhm.
know, and I don't want to use this person's name because they didn't give me permission to talk about the
Sure,
podcast.
sure.
But I will tell you that they they talked about covenants. They
Mhm.
talked about how important they are, and then even took a moment and shared their pain with how they feel, and how that is different from what is available to them in the
Mhm.
church.
Mhm.
But and was just extremely courageous about the whole thing, and ended the talk in one of the best ways I could imagine. I was like, I doubt. In fact, I doubt not only did they not change their talk, because that's what I would do if I was, no matter what I was talking about. If I saw Elder Suarez up there, I'm like, oh, maybe I won't make that
Not
joke.
this, that joke
Maybe
won't land. I'm gonna
I
go.
think they doubled down,
Uh-huh.
and I was like, and I thought, I kind of had that feeling it was probably probably like orchestrated by the Spirit, because I think it was a really good talk about someone's perspective, and how and they called it my sacred pain, and I
Mm.
just loved that term.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
just thought that because the standards of the church are what they are, and maybe we'll understand them, and maybe we'll know more later, but all of us have a sacred pain in living the gospel, maybe some more than others.
Mm.
And that, because it's, I don't have to worry about my identity, and I don't have to worry about that. It all fits in well, but we all in some way have a sacred pain. And I thought that was extremely courageous. And I thought, take a moment to call that out here. I doubt that. I actually don't know. They may listen to this or not. I don't know.
Did Elder Suarez speak after?
He did. He just 5 minutes at the
Any
end.
sort of addressing to the talk that had been given?
No, but he referenced the talk in the idea of talking about covenants and talking about how good a talk it was and
Mm.
that kind of stuff. I mean, he didn't like belittle the talk or try
Sure.
to
Yeah, you wouldn't
shut
think so.
down something that what they said or anyone. And actually all three talk. The youth speaker was dead on, and the talk after this person's talk was, they were all just dead on. And it was like they had planned all this for Elder Suarez to be there. And it was just a really wonderful meeting. So,
It raises the
and it would have
question.
been without him. That's the thing.
Yeah.
So
Do you think that people get the heads up? And if so, when? I've always wondered
my
that. Like
my
if an apostle is
bishop
going to
got the
come,
heads up as he walked in and said, can I come to your ward today? That was when he got the heads up.
but you
Like
know
literally
that
coming
people
out of
get it.
ward
Yeah,
council,
you know that
there's
people
Elder
get it
Sword. Yeah.
other times.
Yeah. I think when it's an official capacity of some sort, this was literally not official at
Yeah.
all. This
Yeah.
he's just
He's
like,
going to
can I
church on
be?
Sunday. Where do I go?
Yep.
He went to the app and he said, where can I
We
worship?
we don't want to sleep in. We don't want to get up at 8.
Well, you don't
What
want to go to the
ward can
young
we go
single
to
adult
at
ward. You don't want to
10:30?
go. Well, that's
My
cool.
flight, I know he was flying home later that day. My flight's, we got to get, this is the
Sure.
time frame, right?
Sure.
So I'm sure that's what they did. And we just got it. It was really cool.
Was there a big
was,
lineup to shake his hand or?
oh yeah.
Picture? Oh yeah. Yeah.
I
Did you do it?
I thought about shaking his hand, and then I thought, I don't need to do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And it's not in a bad way. Like I was just like, I got value out of the Spirit and seeing him there, and it was a lot. It was a really good. I don't need to shake his hand, but I get the idea. Basically, I'm pretty sure that's what the youth classes were that day.
Oh.
Seeing that line of the youth were all lined up, and primary kids and everything else, and I'm sure it was an awesome experience for them to shake hands with an apostle. So
Cool. Let's take a break. When we come back, we're going to do actual articles of news. Here in the second half of Articles of News, we do actual articles of news. Hit it, Peter. And away we go. Now, because we haven't been so great about news recently, some of these stories are, I'm not going to say old, but when you hear the word news, part of that being new, they're not new. It's not hot and fresh out the inbox. It's, some have been simmering. Some have been in the crock pot for a couple days.
That's sometimes better, right? I mean, you make stew, it's good. 3 days later, oh, that's better stew.
Yeah. Think of the cultural hall as a lasagna of news, right?
That's right.
Like it's delicious when it's hot and fresh, but also you take that thing out of the fridge.
It's really marinated all those flavors into it.
Yeah, you stick it in the microwave. Maybe you've reheated it a couple times. Yeah, boom, done. Great, delicious, fantastic. I can't believe I compared us to a lasagna. So let's go here. I thought this was kind of a cool thing. President Nelson, that is the prophet of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, recently on social media has said, hey, share with him examples of peacemakers in your life. Basically, a post that said, hey, I just want to know who some peacemakers are. Tag them, tell me stories about them, share them with me. And then he makes the comment that he can't wait to read, some of the stories of the peacemakers in people's lives, to which I immediately, because I'm a cynical, horrible person, go, do I think that he is really going to take his phone out and kind of look and, he's sitting before a meeting and start scrolling and go, oh, that's a great peacemaker.
Someone will compile a list for him, I'm sure.
And be able to do it. But I thought that part was cool. And the fact that he's trying to flood the social media with like, hey, share with me your inspirational, your peacemaker people in your life. I thought that was great.
All I could think of when he talked about peacemakers in this social media post, probably because my brain changes when I'm talking about social media. I thought they were called peacemaker missiles. They're actually called peacekeeper missiles, but.
So you thought of missiles. See, and where I thought you were going is where my brain legitimately goes whenever I see it. And because he's a heart surgeon, I think pacemaker. So
pacemakers.
When I saw that, I thought he was asking to share the examples of pacemakers in your life. I really did. I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know,
I guess we really took to his peacemaker talk from April, right?
Yes, yeah, it's just an extension of all that. But I
Yeah,
mean, a great read. Read about some incredible peacemakers that people are sharing with the prophet. That's just on his Instagram.
Let me ask you. I mean, can you think of anyone in your life that would you be considered a peacemaker?
A peacemaker. I mean, I guess in the way that I would interpret peace. I think of my dad. I think my dad is sort of this example of like helping people feel at peace, not necessarily like, coming in. I guess my mind immediately goes to like someone like a and the word is escaping me, but like arbitration. What is that? Why can't I think of what the someone that would come in and be like, let's talk about
Mediator.
mediator. That's the word I was looking for.
Yeah.
Not that's not him, but like helping people be at peace, being able to kind of step into their life and be able to walk alongside them so that they can find peace. He has a very calming way about being like, and what would the consequence of that choice be? And what would the consequence of that choice be? And not being like, and you need to do this. And I guess for me, that's very peacemaking. But what about you?
Yeah, I was thinking about my brother Travis. He's just younger than, well, I guess there's five of us, so he's the second to youngest. He just always has that ability. I've always thought that, at least within the siblings. I don't know how he is outside the family. He might be a real jerk.
Yeah, it might be a real jerk.
But I doubt it.
No, sure.
But he's always had that ability to kind of bridge the gaps between differences within our family. And so I think that's a real skill. Sometimes people have that skill because of where they fall in their family. I think that helped with Travis. I mean, he's got three boisterous and loud older brothers and a younger sister, and he always had to be kind of keeping everything together. But I think it's also a natural. There's a natural side of him that makes it that way. So anyway,
so probably not a jerk outside of your family.
No, probably not.
Yeah. Anyway, a great read. You should check it out. I know you have choir news. Everyone, in your absence, they feel like, is the choir doing anything? What is Mr.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm not talking about the choir, I mean,
yeah,
the choir, I mean, they almost closed it down, but now I'm back. So they
okay.
Kidding. Oh, geez, that's back. Well, first of all, I went to get news off their webpage today, and something just was interesting that like a banner is at the top of it today, and it says the music and spoken word rehearsals and Sunday broadcasts will be held in the Tabernacle until June 18th. That's normal. After June 18th, rehearsals and Sunday broadcasts will move to the conference center starting on June 22nd. What they don't say, and I tried to find out and probably didn't try hard enough, is that a permanent or temporary change, or is there a reason for that? Is it technology based? In my brain, I think maybe it's because as the Tabernacle Choir moves to more of a world-based choir, and they made some announcements that way that the technology in the tabernacle, the tabernacle may not meet that. I don't know the answer to that. I would love to know.
I know the answer, and I can tell that you haven't looked very hard, because what I typed into the Google box is, why is music in the spoken word moving to the conference center?
Oh, come on. That seems like so kindergarten to type it.
And then the answer it gave me is, the live music in the spoken word broadcast is performed in the Tabernacle on Temple Square, except during the months of June, July, August, and December, when it moves to the conference center. And then it tells me why. Do you know why?
Well, because they have concerts and everything else
to accommodate larger crowds. So they find that with people visiting in the summertime, and then around the holidays, people would attend it. So it's in the Tabernacle the rest of the time.
I guess got schooled, and I actually knew that. I knew that from the past.
People that are Patreon saying, see me winking at Mr. Mayor going, yes, of course.
What I mean is that I was aware of that. When I say knew that, maybe didn't know that. I was aware of that. Like if you went to and I just didn't put the two together. In my brain, I was adding more to what was going on the page. But
yeah, you're a conspiracy theorist as far as the choir goes.
I am. I Another one to bring up, and I think it's worth talking, and I know we've brought it up before. If you are interested in being a member of the choir, the audition process is beginning. So you can start if you go to tabernaclechoir.org, you can find the application to apply and get your spot to go audition for the choir. So there's an application guide. Definitely read and follow those instructions to the letter, because they probably won't look at you if you don't, because there's a
Sure.
lot of, they probably will set you aside. Not to be a jerk or anything, but they only can, they
It's
can't like
rigorous,
handle
and
everything.
there are probably
Yeah,
hundreds, if not thousands, of people who try and get into it. So if you can't follow
exactly.
a simple instruction, you're out.
Yeah. So you do the application guide, fill out the application, get that turned in, and follow it to the letter, and then let us know if you make an audition. I would love to follow someone through the audition process, whether they get it or not. I would love to know how that works and how
But
that is. I
you
know I have
and
some family members. Yeah.
I mean, you're aware of like because say you get to audition, right? And they're like, yeah, maybe. Then you're like part of like the third level choir, and
Yep.
then you're there for a while, and then you're in the second level choir, and then you're there for a while.
So
And then
it's like the 3 degrees of glory.
yeah,
You
yeah.
move from the telestial choir to the terrestrial choir
I
to
mean,
the
they would
celestial
hate
choir.
that you say that, but it
Yeah,
really is
but I'm
like
good.
that. It's like a group of people that you sort of perform with and learn with and grow with, and then hopefully you get a chance. I have a friend who I grew up with, and well, I knew her as a younger person. Her mom was in the choir, and she recently has joined the choir just as her mom. Her mom has since passed away, so it's like she is able to be singing with her mom. Is the experience that she has shared
That's
about
awesome.
being in the choir. Yeah, super cool. And then they get to
Before
travel to
you go and run
Mexico.
and just do this, though, before you run and do this, just read the whole page, because
Yeah,
it talks a lot about like which phases it's going to be.
sure,
That they actually have a choir school that you'll have to attend.
sure.
That's
A lot of
16
theory.
weeks, and you can't miss that.
Yep.
At 100% attendance. So I mean, it's definitely rigorous. They're trying to remove the wheat from the tares, I guess,
Sure.
is, and,
You are being
uh,
very strict on this audition process. I get it.
well, I
We
think if
gotta
you're
follow it.
interested in doing it, you should gear up and get yourself ready for it. Because someday I will do it. I
Yeah.
really feel like someday I'll go and become part of the choir. I don't have the.
But you don't have a lot of time because you have to do it before 55 or something, right? Isn't that
Are you saying I'm old? Are you saying
well,
I'm
no,
old?
I'm just saying that the time that you will be 55 comes at some point, whether it's 20 years or 10 years or
Yeah,
whatever.
you're right. I mean, truthfully, if I still live here in Texas, and I realize there's the new thing that you can do, my time may not work out for that
Yeah.
way, and that's okay. Then I'll join some local choir and love that, and I'll always be part of the ward choir, which I think is wonderful.
Yeah.
Good,
I
bad, or ugly.
my ward
One
choir
bass
apparent
and four altos and one soprano and two tenors, and we're all singing,
yeah,
right?
we apparently had 2 on Sunday. The thing that I'm disappointed in you with, as
Oh,
far as the, following the instructions to go, is I feel like it really could have been an opportunity for you to use the phrase "jot and tittle,"
oh,
and you
you
didn't,
should have
and
followed every jot and tittle.
I feel like it was a failed
I
opportunity.
I
If
will
we
put my head
edited
in
these
shame
things
for yeah.
Tell me about Mexico, the choirs in Mexico.
Choirs in Mexico, and they are and I just flipped over to that thing, and apparently I grabbed the one that's in Spanish. So I can't read you the page. No, but they're in Mexico. They're going to be broadcasting from Mexico. So this weekend you'll be able to watch music and the spoken word as they come from Mexico. So they're touring all of Latin America. So it's not just Mexico. It's just where they're at this weekend.
Well, and it's the first time in years and years and years. And if people want to have the experience about being able to see it, the Tabernacle Choir's YouTube channel has all of these videos that you'll be able to do. But they're bringing the full production. I mean, maybe not exactly like
Yeah,
how
the
it is
last
in the
time they were
Tabernacle Choir.
supposed to go was they were supposed to go in 2020, if I remember
Hmm.
right, and they
Hmm.
canceled it,
Hmm.
which means they didn't go. They probably the last time they went was 2018. So
Well,
it's
but to
been quite a
Mexico, it's been
while.
like 30 or 40 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just mean on tour.
Mhm.
They haven't toured anywhere since probably my guess is 2018 because it's usually every other year. So yeah, that would make sense. So 2020 would have been 2018. So it's been a long time. And then yeah, Mexico, it's been 30 years. So
Just pretty
30.
incredible. Fun to also have that kind of be on the heels of the fact that now you're going to have music in the spoken word available in Spanish. That being the, the spoken word part of the music and spoken word. The choir will still continue to sing in English, but it's pretty remarkable some of the changes that are coming out with the Tabernacle Choir.
Whatever
Pretty
happened
awesome.
to that brief moment when they in general conference where they had Spanish speaking and they just put and now they did it one session a few years ago where they had
Mhm.
a Spanish speaker and they spoke in their native language and then put up subtitles and then you never heard about that again. I just wondered about that
I think
because I
that
think that's awesome.
yeah, I do too. To be able to hear the speakers in their native language, I think that translation became hard for people because I think
Yeah.
English and whatever the other language is where a lot of the church's translation kind of comes from. You don't have a lot of like German and Farsi speaking people, or you know what I'm saying? Like they're
Yeah.
kind of those things. Like English is the base, and then whatever the other thing
You'd
is.
think they'd have this language training thing that could, something that you could go through from like when you're 19, to 21 ish,
Sure,
somewhere in that
sure, but
realm.
those are all rooted for the most part in English, right? If you're learning
Oh, I see.
Spanish, you're coming there as an English speaker. If you're learning, English, you're coming as a Spanish speaker. There's
I
not a
get it.
lot of the like
Sorry, I had to just make that comment.
the Mandarin, although I agree. Send everybody to the MTC. This was interesting. Speaking of kind of missions and some things that have been celebrated recently, Lithuania celebrates 30th anniversary of missionary work, and what's unique about this is I can remember as a youth missionaries friends that were a little bit older in high school being called to serve in the Baltic mission and being
Yeah, it
like
was a big
and
deal back
opening it
then.
up.
Yeah, it was huge. It was a big deal. You all those Baltic countries, Lithuania and others. It was like people would like it was like hushed tones. They're going there. It was like this
Mhm.
big
Oh, I
deal,
can't.
the iron. And now it's you don't even think about it. It's normal, right?
Well, and I just think it's a fascinating look at, sometimes we think, well, the world's been open to the gospel, and there's sort of this idea that because the globalization of the church that we've been sort of everywhere always, and you still think about like there are countries that the church is not allowed to even proselyte into, and some of the growth just in the continent of Africa as well, where it's like these are missions, these are districts and stakes and parts of countries that have never had the gospel before. Today, 2023, where in 30 years there will be likely me and you doing an articles of news talking about how 30 years ago that got opened up
There's got
and
to be like a heat map of the world and where we're in, like a colored map, like where
Mhm.
you can look at all the countries and are we in there at all? And like red is that we're fully in there. We have stakes and temples and everything else, all the way down to white or whatever. I don't know what color you would do, all the way this heat map to where
Yeah.
oh we're not in there at all, and then others where it's like not only are not in there, we're banned, or there's
There's some sort
lit-
of restriction on it. I don't that seems to me like the thing that, Corey K. Ward, the pharaoh himself,
yeah, that's
who
what I
does our
was
temple
thinking.
ticker, I think he would know about that. I'll ask him next time I talk to him, see if we can't
That would
get
be
that
good
dialed
that
down.
would be kind of cool to know, and maybe if there's an expert about that who can maybe talk about it, I'd listen to that episode for sure.
I know that there's, obviously, like, you can see where there's a map where you can see where all the temples have been announced, and there's, like, pin
Yeah.
drops for all of those, but, yeah, to your point, a heat map. What other news stories have you, sir?
Mm. I was just Tabernacle Choir in it. Let's see. There was one other I wanted to talk about, and that was um the bugs.
Oh,
Of
gross.
course when
Have you
I'm looking
watched
for
the video on
stories.
this? Have you watched the video?
Yeah, they're kind
Oh.
of it's gross. I just so Mormon crickets. I mean, you type in Mormon news. I know it's probably not everyone loves it, but LDS News doesn't give you all the news. So
Sure.
you type in Mormon news, and the top of the list was the Mormon crickets in Nevada, and all I could think of. And you just watch, and if you want to know probably what the early saints went through, you just watch these videos about it, and you realize just how devastating they can be. And it's gross, and all I can think of is, where are the seagulls?
Yeah.
Come on,
Somebody
seagulls.
somebody tell the saints to pay their tithing and let's get the seagulls in there.
That's
Come
what it is.
on.
Nevada saints aren't paying their tithing, and that
Yeah.
must be. It couldn't be just a natural course
No,
and a
no, no.
dry summer or
No.
anything else.
Nope,
They,
that's not it.
yeah.
The
So
this
I look at that, and Austin is like one of the hottest we've ever seen. Like that since I've lived here. Like
Mhm.
it's the hottest year since I've lived here. We're just like hunkered down in the AC. I'm sure my bill is really expensive this
Sure.
year, and I'm thinking about that, and so then I think, at least I'm not in Nevada.
Yeah. The snap, crackle, and pop of those Mormon crickets, real gross. Like the videos, it has been for several days now in the news. I always like to say the term "the news fetchers" because that makes me feel like it's an expletive. The news fetchers, because yeah,
Oh,
I
those.
similarly have it gathering for Mormon news, but it's just been story after story after story after story about these crickets, and you see the car like driving on the road, and the road is covered in the Mormon crickets.
Oh yeah,
Just
they've.
ugh.
And it's that crunch with a little bit of squish in it.
All right, let's change that subject. So this is an interesting kind of story from the church news. We talked a couple episodes ago about some of the resources available for like American Sign Language, for vision impaired, for hearing impaired resources within the church. Well, now the disability resources include Bible videos in ASL and audio description. They have released additional disability resources. You can go to churchofjesuschrist.org and be able to check these out. Creating and translating disability resources is an ongoing effort, said Katie Ednesteed, previous guest of the Cultural Hall. We recognize that we still have a long way to go, but we are committed to increasing the disability resources available to Latter-day Saints around the world. And then this article, which, by the way, you can find a link in the show notes to all of the things that we talk about, talks about how it's so important that the Bible videos are available in American Sign Language, and how before, again, this is another one of those things where we, because of our privilege, sort of take advantage of this or take for granted this, that there's a group of people, a population in great number of people who weren't able to enjoy this or feel the spirit of these things, or know even what these were all about until these resources have been translated or made available for those that need them in other means. And the fact that the church is doing this now, great. Love it. Could not have more of it. I just think that it more and more available that they can do is it's just so important. It says the church has translated 25 disability resource videos into languages like French, German, Italian, Japanese, Korean, Portuguese, Spanish, Tagalog. They're all available under the Life Help section of the Gospel Library. So you can check these out, even if you just want to know and be familiar with what they are. The Gospel Language Symbols Library has expanded the number of available English symbols to 117, and the first set of translated symbols are now available in Cebuano, French, German, Italian, Japanese, Korean, Portuguese, Spanish, and Tagalog. So find out more about that. Be aware of those, and especially if there's someone in the ward that could benefit from being able to have those disability resources, share. Because I think a large part, there's members of the church that don't know that these resources exist.
I remember years ago, my dad didn't have any legs, and so we were talking about how
Wait
the
a minute.
church.
Wait a minute.
Did I not tell you?
I
My
don't know.
dad was a double amputee.
I did not
Did we
know
not
that.
have
And the
this
way that you
conversation?
just sort of casually said that, as you'll remember years ago, my dad didn't.
Yeah, because you knew my dad, right?
Yeah, sure.
So my
Okay.
dad was a double amputee. So I grew up, as my dad being a double amputee.
Okay.
And so, it was like ramps and parking spaces and things. It was always very apparent. When I was younger, the church, when he first, he lost one leg and then later lost his other one. When he lost his first leg, I remember it was a thing. Like he couldn't get into church very well. He like the ward had to like they ended up going out of their way and then had to build a ramp, and it was specific to our ward. It hadn't gone everywhere yet, and very soon afterwards, no church was built without some sort of accommodations
Sure.
for him and everything else. And I remember talking to him about it. It was like when I was in high school, and I remember think because in my lifetime things had changed that quickly from when he lost his first leg to losing his second leg. And now he was in a position where he could get into our school, he could get into everywhere. And I remember saying, "Isn't that cool?" And he said, "It is cool." He said, "But I was always able to do some, like, with your help. Like my boys, we can get myself into places and stuff." He says, he said when they and he said something about ASL and translate. He says, "I can still come in, sit outside and hear." You know what I mean? And I can, he said, when that level of care is taken for every disability, he'll be a lot happier. And this is now in a situation where pretty much he could get into every ward now. But he was more concerned about those people he's like, those people who come and they can't understand why they're there. They're just hoping to feel the spirit.
Sure.
Whether that's, they can't understand the language. They can't understand it because they can't hear the language or whatever reason. And he was more concerned about that. So that always set strong with me. So when you talk about, all these resources that are being provided, it just makes it. I think my dad would be just so happy about that. So
you can find it in the Gospel Library app. Check it out. There's so many cool things in there. I was poking around the other day, and there's the whole the self-reliance class that the church teaches sometimes in wards and stakes. It's in there. The whole discipline, I almost said doctrine, but like the whole, curriculum of that particular class in there. You just want to
I was always thinking, what if Ron Swanson from Parks and Rec taught that class? He would open up and it would say, "Make more money."
Yep. and then the app would shut itself down.
Yep.
Couple other things sort of worth note. I thought this was particularly interesting. Bishop Cossé, that is the presiding bishop of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, dedicates a new global distribution services center. I didn't even know that we were building a new global distribution services center.
I thought that the Welfare Square in Salt Lake was the one.
Well, and
they have little ones, but
yeah. So now it's a new state-of-the-art global distribution services center in Salt Lake. It was dedicated on the 8th of June. Cossé said, "Being here is a joyful experience for all of us. We're excited to dedicate a brand new facility, one which will provide and distribute church materials and temple clothing to church members living around the world. It is such a magnificent structure with state-of-the-art equipment for which we are most grateful." About 200 church employees and guests gathered at the distribution center for the dedication. Thank you to its influence. It will spread throughout the entire world and will bless generations of members. It will help in the great and holy work of saving souls. It's a 339,000 square foot facility in an industrial area near the Salt Lake City International Airport.
So this is distribution. This is like materials, clothing, not necessarily welfare distribution. That, in my brain,
correct.
Okay,
distribution services more like temple clothes, books, manuals, all the.
So now you have Temple Square, you have Welfare Square, now you have Distribution Square.
Yeah, there are 17 smaller warehouses around the world. The article notes. I just think it's pretty incredible. About 40 million units or items are anticipated to be shipped from the facility every year to help meet the spiritual needs of the faith's 17 million members.
So when I order my garments online, they may come from there.
Yeah, I would think they would definitely come through there at some point. The church uses public carriers, and the boxes are shipped by air or ocean to international destinations. Church publications such as Scriptures Manual can be found online, but it's not always easy for members to access the internet from locations such as Africa and Latin America, where membership is growing. So if you go online, place an order, you'll typically receive that order within 3 to 5 days. In the previous facility, it may have taken up to 10 days. So also
So this
far
is
more.
the divine Amazon.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. Other kind of things worth noting. I thought this was interesting. We talked about the church building bridges and with interfaith work, and we talk about them being able to build bridges with those that may not believe the same way or something like that. Well, that's not at all what this story is about. It's about a literal bridge that the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints donated nearly $100,000 for. It's
Wow. So they're really building bridges.
yeah, it's in Kalamu, which is a neighborhood of Kinshasa in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. It's going to replace an unstable footbridge that was damaged by recent torrential rains, and it's going to be capable of carrying vehicles up to 10 tons. The church made that $100,000 donation. And let's get this quote. We do lots of projects in collaboration. We in the church do not hesitate to help those who ask for assistance. Projects such as these are made possible by generous donations of church members around the world. They follow the Savior's example of charity without regard to race, religion, or nationality. Thought it was just real cool to see that we talk about building bridges, like you said, in other ways, but a literal bridge help build. I don't think that we talked about this. I recently stepped into the Mormon News Roundup, which is another podcast and YouTube channel, and was able to help co-host what is essentially their articles of news. Dives, who is their host, he and I talked for almost an hour and a half, and I'll tell you what.
I'm going to listen to it now, and I'm going to feel jealous.
He
like you're betraying your own.
He preps like crazy. The preparation that he puts into it and has like a lower scrolling third for the YouTube and all this stuff. It's how perhaps if I had time, I would do the Cultural Hall and articles of news. If you listen to it, he at the end of that will call me out because I had not mentioned when I said I was going to be on his podcast before the name of it or his name. So I want to make sure that I give proper cred to him. The Mormon News Roundup. It is adjacent to like what we do here in the Cultural Hall, talk about news stories, but it is a different feel, and he does a great job. And there's space for everyone, and encourage you to go and check out that episode, which I did, and there will be a link.
I will, and I'm going to feel betrayed.
Why? Don't feel betrayed. Don't feel betrayed.
I've
done lots of podcasts in other places.
I know.
This
is a news one.
This is the only show available in podcast form.
That's true.
Yep.
That is true. The one thing you can always say.
Yes. The one thing I can always say that makes no sense to most people is that this is the only show available in podcast form.
You know what? You've explained it to me before, and it still kind of makes no sense.
Yeah, no, it doesn't. It's great. It's one of the things that I love the most about this is that so many of the things that we do don't make sense or are unnecessary.
That's wonderful. I think that's a whole podcast should be built around the unnecessary.
So let's do maybe one or two more news stories, and then we'll wrap this thing out. Have we talked about here? I don't think that we have. So let's bring it up. Utah School District, that is Davis County School District. I
read this.
The Bible, yeah. And then has now had someone come to them and say, "Hey, we would like you to also take a look at the Book of Mormon for being banned." Where this comes from is there were some folks that said, hey, there's some content that's being shared with our elementary and middle school kids that we really don't like that. So this group came up with a list of things that said, hey, these are the things that would be inappropriate material for our school kids to be able to get. People that did not like that people were starting to do that looked at it and went, oh, well, listen, if we're having, adultery, if we're having, violence and those things, well, then you can't have the Bible. So they appealed to this board, said, kind of judge what the Bible has. And they said, yeah, we can't have the Bible. If these are our guidelines, our restrictions, the Bible can't be in schools anymore. And then after that announcement was made, it was made that that people had also asked them to look at the Book of Mormon. And
Well, if you're going to keep a standard, yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah.
And to me, I suppose it's interesting. One interesting piece about this here in the state of Utah is that there are already groups that are saying, yeah. No, we want to keep the guidelines, but that doesn't count for religious material.
Yeah.
So there are people that are already trying to kind of circumvent the own thing that they did and make sure that the Book of Mormon and the Bible can be available back in schools, which, as you can probably imagine, those who don't want anything banned are like, okay, so now we're making a religious exemption for
Yeah.
this. Guys, we're speaking out of both sides of our mouths. But there are another group of people that are like, listen, if in order to keep material A, B, and C out of the eyes and listening ears of our school kids, we have to ban the Bible and Book of Mormon. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's like anything you do, the power, when you give power to the government, it sometimes a needful thing to do, but be aware it's gonna apply to you, even if you didn't think it should. Like if your moral stance means that you think a law should be made against something, or a book should be banned, or a standard should be set at a government level, be aware that that's going to be turned around and hit you at the same time. If you may think that it doesn't apply to you because it's common sense or whatever.
Sure.
That's not how the government works.
Yeah.
You apply a standard, the standard eventually gets applied across the board, and it should. I mean, if you're good, that's why you need to be careful about what laws we make, what laws we don't make. We need to be thoughtful about that. And in my opinion, if you're of the opinion that the government should be out of explaining this kind of stuff to your kids, maybe the Book of Mormon Bible being in the library shouldn't be something you care about. You should be like, no, I'll talk about that at home.
Yeah.
Like if you're I'll talk about sex at home, or I'll talk about this at home. Probably that's what you should do with religion too. Now, I don't necessarily agree with. I'm not a big book banner. I don't think you should. I think there should be limited libraries for kids in schools as they get older that kind of grow with them. But the public library, I think, pretty much anything should be there.
Yeah. And you should be able to have that conversation with your kids. And I don't fully know, what it was that spurred even the initial kind of conversation around it. But I do think that to your point, sometimes when we go, I've got to put my foot down about whatever the thing is, we don't realize what the foot being down wholly means. We see it from the perspective of, well, this will end these things, but there are also those other consequences that
but the things that also apply to that standard that you think are okay, so you have to be thoughtful about the whole thing. Unintended consequences can always get you.
Yeah, they haven't made any sort of announcement as to whether or not the Book of Mormon will be banned, but as I mentioned, there are organizations already in the state of Utah that have said, yeah, you know what, we're gonna make some other things around this. Maybe we can get it so that there's a religious.
And the moment you get a religious exception, lots of texts are going to turn religious. You're going to have people. I mean, you're going to have real people who think of certain texts as religious, and they're going to come up and say, well, then if that's the case, it's whatever it is, right? So, anyway.
Going back to our conversation from before about making the gospel available to people in all language, I thought it was interesting to note that translators translating things to the Navajo language are still working to complete all of the standard works. So there have been selections of the Book of Mormon and Doctrine and
That's
Covenants.
interesting. I didn't realize they hadn't have everything in there.
Yeah, and even the Bible in some respects, but they are now finishing up a complete translation of all of the standard works. And I won't go into this too much because it's my hope, and we've got the contact with one of the translators, one of the ones that's been kind of the forefront on this project. So have them come in and tell us all about it in the cultural hall. But by June 2024, it will be by then it will be available for people to be able
Wow, that's
to get
cool.
the Navajo
I guess
2.0.
it does make sense. I mean, with the way that white Americans dealt with the American Indians back in the day, like they didn't want them speaking their language, so why would they translate it into their language? So I guess it does make sense. It just feels like, is it still that way? Yeah, I guess it is.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and it just seems like, I mean, sometimes we can get so caught up in it because of where and who we are, right? As English speaking, you know, United States members of the church, that we go, oh yeah, no, of course everyone has. Oh no, not everyone has all of it at all. So
Exactly.
let's see, just maybe one or two left. 5 ideas to help you share and not overshare personal experiences at church. I appreciate this. I'll go
You're
through
bringing
them
this up for
quick.
me, huh?
Yes. Yep. Number 1, stay focused, Mr. Mayor. Number 2, be mindful. Remember that the First Presidency expressed a concern that in some instances, members who desire to bear their testimonies in fast and testimony meeting do not have the opportunity to do so. So be mindful of other people that might want to do it. And I think that if you're mindful that other people might want to, you might be inclined to share a little bit less, which allows more time. It goes on to say 3, this is number 3 in the 5 ideas to help you share and not overshare personal experiences at church, is share what you know. It might feel a little intimidating to share your testimony over the pulpit or in a comment in a class, particularly if you're struggling with questions. But this church isn't just for those who feel 100% confident in all aspects of their testimony. So that's number 3. Number 4, think before you share. Are you listening, Mr. Mayor? Think.
What's that? I just wanted to share something about
Yeah. I was
what.
just
No, I'm just
waiting
kidding.
till I got an opportunity to say something. Think before you share. Maybe there's a personal story or experience that you'd like to share as part of your testimony in a talk or in a comment in class. Stories are a wonderful way to leave an impression on listeners and can be a useful tool, but some stories may be better to share than others. So think before you share. And then number 5, and I can tell this the older I get, it seems, when people rely on the Holy Ghost, like legitimately, as to whether or not they should share what they're going to share. And I don't know if it's me just being like, oh, hey, I'm sensitive to that as far as the spirit goes, and have things affirmed that it's like, oh yeah, that was a great comment, or where I'm like, that person is sharing because they hadn't shared in a couple minutes, or they felt like they needed
Yeah.
to, or maybe again, being the cynic that I am, I just think that there are definitely different kinds of comments, and
I
I
think
think the
for
spirit
me, there's
confirms that.
times when I'm feeling emotionally charged, and
Mhm.
then there's times when the spirit is directing me. And sometimes they feel similar. And as I've gotten older, I've learned to I've tried to learn to distinguish between those. Sometimes they work at the same time, but sometimes just being emotionally charged doesn't mean I should share that thing,
Yeah.
because so.
And then lastly, do you watch the Battlestar Galactica? You strike me as someone
Oh
who
yeah.
would.
Yeah. We used to have debates about this.
And and how so much of it translates, you'll forgive the pun, into Mormonism because of one of the creators
I mean, the
being.
original one more so than the later one, but still the later one. They kind of converted. Like, I mean, they came from the in the original one, they came from the planet Kolob.
Yeah, so
You know,
it just
I mean,
is
it's just
constant
steeped.
throughout it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. 12. They have 12. Uh, Essentially, a council of 12 that is comparable to the quorum of the 12. They always go in twos. We probably took things too far, that because you had Starbuck and oh, I can't think of it. They always went in twos, like they were missionaries. Now some of that stuff might just be the fact that that's what they did with the writing.
Mhm.
But I mean, once you start, you can find things that maybe were even unintended. But yeah, but it is definitely grounded in the it's basically created this mythology. It's like, what if the Mormon pioneers were not coming across the plains? What if they were coming across space? And that's essentially the concept of the original Battlestar Galactica.
And the reason why the original one, Larson is his name.
Yep.
Who wrote the original 1978 series, Glenn A. Larson, was a practicing Mormon. So brought in part of it. And how cool is that? Like, to other people, they're like, oh yeah, no, this sounds like a great idea. And he's like, oh yeah, this too. And they're like, where do you come up with
Where
this?
did you come up with these ideas? And if you ever see in the old series, like, you can YouTube it, like, there's a marriage ceremony that is strikingly, and I can't remember the details. I don't know if they're at an altar, but I think they are. They're at an altar. I mean, it is strikingly like a temple ceremony. I mean, there's a lot of things. So just, you can probably go down a rabbit hole of Mormonism in Battlestar Galactica and spend days looking at that stuff.
I encourage someone to do that and then be that guest here in the Cultural Hall. Okay, we're done, Mr. Mayor. Hope that this episode has nourished and strengthened your body.
And if you're not healthy enough to listen to this week, you will be healthy enough to listen next week.
And that when the time comes, you'll be able to travel home in safety. In the meantime, we'll be saving a seat for you
on the back row
of
the
Cultural Hall.